Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome back to Jay's One Key Event 3rd edition, also known as JOKE3. We are slowly winding down the end of what has been a very electrifying quarterfinals weekend so far. A few winners bracket matches left to determine, and a couple of conditional matches needing to be decided as well. For right now, we have another winners bracket showdown. It's going to be Adri going up against Dectopia to see who will keep their winners bracket run alive in this tournament. As always, my name is Sparky, and I'm joined in the commentary booth by none other than Teezel. Teezel, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing pretty good. This match, I'm pretty interested to see. Dectopia is a player that seeded decently low overall, but has kind of showcased their ability to learn very fast. Beating out some of our significantly higher seeded players still in the winners bracket and quarterfinals, and now they're going to be taking on Adri, who is a bit of a wonky veteran. So how they'll do, no idea, but I feel like this has good opportunity to be a close one.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully the scores are a little bit higher than the overall rolls. Dectopia winning 13-4. Had plenty of opportunity, Adri did, to win that. Managed to somehow roll lower. Very impressive feat overall.
Yeah, it seems like we've had loads of really low rolls this weekend, so people have been practicing the pool a bit harder than their rolls.
For sure. And I mean, both these players are pretty seasoned, know how to put in the time to committing some of these maps to memory. At least from what we have seen so far. Like you alluded to, Adri has been around the block a couple of times in the one key scene, pretty well-known name around here. Dectopia, on the other hand, has been kind of having a meteoric rise. Kind of came out of nowhere, like you mentioned, one of the lower seeded players still left in that winner's bracket. Looking to try and cause a bit of an upset here as we get into the bans. And it looks like it's going to be a stream pick being removed versus the SV. So not going to be seeing either of those in this match.
Alright, yeah, so getting rid of the stream pick by Adri and getting rid of SV by Dectopia. So, you know, as you just said, these players are very committed to putting maps to memory, but looks like Dectopia doesn't feel terribly confident on the SV, and is going to be starting off with speed.
Yeah, understandably so. I think Adri is one of the more committed SV learners remaining in this tournament. There are a couple that do commit the time, but because of the fact that there's only one SV pick, it makes it very easy to kind of just target that out if you don't want to put in the time to learning it. And Dectopia is probably going to rely on their overall raw rice physicality to see them through here, opting to go for the speed pick to start things off.
Yeah, it seems like a fair thing to go for. It's just the hardest part about speed is just making sure you don't like key lock.
Yeah, key lock and overstreams are deadly on a pick like this. That being said, it is one of the longer maps in this pool, so recovering from mistakes is a little bit more forgiving compared to some of the other maps in this pool. And because of all these nasty 3-note bursts, is pretty much ripe potential for drops, as we see here from the side of Adri. Dectopia making it through this introduction relatively unscathed, hovering around that 99.7 mark.
Yeah, maintaining a really high ratio. We can see Adri dropping way more just regular 300s, dropping in a couple of 200s here and there as well. I've even seen 100s, the accuracy is dropping very fast down to below 95.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where it's like you can kind of swing a performance on this if you kind of mash through some of these longer elongated bursts, and I think that's what we're seeing here from Adri, just trying to preserve some of the combo unsuccessfully, unfortunately, at the expense of some of their accuracy, and it's really giving Dectopia a massive cushion to work with going into the second third now.
Yeah, approaching 80,000 score lead. Very, very difficult to come back from in Mania.
Yeah, especially in one key. It's one of those where once you get a lead that big, it takes a pretty substantial drop to swing it on over as we take the first real break in the chart as we transition on into the back half. It is going to crest 6 digits in terms of a lead. I think the good thing for Adri is that they probably would have never picked this of their own accord in the first place, so maybe just taking this opportunity to get a bit of extra warm-up in to prepare themselves for what is to come in the rest of this match.
Yeah, just still holding on to that full combo. That accuracy is really high. I just don't really see Adri being able to come back from this on the score difference now over 100,000. It's a pretty rough first pick for Adri, but really great performance from Dectopia. Very confident first pick, and that's exactly what you want to be seeing.
Yeah, for sure. Really able to get this match off started on the right foot here. Last thing you want is to give your opponent the immediate break point to start things off, and looks like playing to their strengths. I think this was one of the more, I would say, obvious options for them to go to. Now, considering that end time was banned out, I imagine that probably would have been the first pick for them if it were the other way around, if speed were removed from this pool.
Yeah, let's just hope, you know, for Adri's sake, the kind of difficulty here is just more in the speed itself rather than just like the overall difficulty of the pool. Which is probably the case. I don't ever recall Adri being kind of known as like a fast player, so... No, a score of 808k versus 989. Only
That
three
is
200s off a V1 SS, which is incredibly strong.
very strong indeed. And Dectopia going to take an early 0-1 lead here as we get into what'll be Adri's first pick in this match. And unsurprisingly, going to want to get away from the Rice, if at all humanly possible. Going to go for LN2 here to kick things off on their side.
All right, makes perfect sense. Going with probably the hardest LN style map in the entire pool. Probably the type of map that's the weakest for Dectopia, just based off of what I've seen throughout the tournament.
Yeah, it really is a pretty interesting dichotomy that begins to develop when you throw in some of these more Taiko-leaning players into the arena on one key. The fact that you have to throw in that release element that they don't really have to contend with, and you see it in the release patterning. Sometimes the patterning can be a little bit forgiving in those like 1/4 streams where it's like really short LNs. You can kind of play them like rice notes, but when you have a map like this where it has varying LN release lengths, it can become a bit of a hassle to get through relatively unscathed. It'll be interesting to see how they respond as we officially dive on in.
There's also a bit of a difficulty spike. I think it's around halfway or 2/3 into the map that has some very interesting kind of doublets going on, and it's very easy to trip up on those. So even if you're the player that's FCing with the higher accuracy on the LNs, if your opponent is still on the full combo and manages to hit that section and you don't, you could potentially lose that lead.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
That is a section we'll worry about when it comes along.
Absolutely. And right now, as we pass through this first quarter, both players actually holding on to their FCs for the moment. Adri taking a little bit more damage through the opening section in comparison to Dectopia. And I think the onus really does fall on Dectopia to be able to maintain this level of pace against Adri, because like you were alluding to, all it takes is one bad section to really swing the lead over one way or another. And both of them making it through the first third with their FCs intact.
Yeah, they're within 1,000 points of each other. It's at the level where like a single 200 or so can make the difference, and here is the section I was talking about. Dectopia being the one to find the miss. Adri has now got the strongest lead so far in the entire map, just over 5,000 points. Now sending that to 7k. So all he needs to do is keep holding on to that.
There is one last tricky section in this chart. There are some 1/6 bursts. Here's the first one. There's another one that comes after this. It's very easy to note lock on these if you're not starting them off on the right hand, but both of them making it through relatively unscathed. Dectopia starting to build up their accuracy just that little bit here, just waiting to see if an opening presents itself from Adri.
Alright, the player's hitting the other 1/6 just after the long LN there. Quarter of the map left to go. Things are looking good for Adri, but, you know, 11,000 points can lose that very quickly.
For sure, but that was the last tricky doublet in the remainder of the song. Now it's just a test of concentration. Can you hold your nerve through this last eighth? It is starting to shrink a little bit, the lead, as Dectopia manages to maintain pace. They're back over that 400 combo cap, in prime position to capitalize on any potential slip-ups here from Adri, but they have been very consistent on this chart overall. Sure, taking a little bit of damage here and there in the number of 200s that they have received, but doing just enough at the end of the day with these last couple of patterns coming through. And we're tied up 1-1.
A very nice round score from Adri there. 975k exactly. Dectopia, despite the misses, only 962k. Only like 13,000 point difference, really. Very, very small. But as we see with the ratio, Dectopia was actually the one that came out on top. Just having those 250s and the one miss is what really made the big difference for that one.
Yeah, for sure. That doublet section really can be a bit of a decider on that chart, and it looked to be the case there as Dectopia opts to go for hybrid 1 here. A little change of pace from what at least I was expecting their strategy to be going into this match, and understandable. There are some tricky rice-oriented sections in this chart, but It'll be interesting to see how Adri fares, because there is a little bit of a speed element to some of those bursts that Dectopia might be looking to try and take advantage of here.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. And I've found that this week, the hybrid maps are generally more Rice focused than LN focused. You know, like there might be a high LN count, but the types of LNs that kind of feature in the map, you don't really have like too much of your like really varying release timing. I feel like it is mostly just like Rice style LNs. So, you know, it's not something that LN focused players can like as heavily rely on compared to the previous rounds.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely enough favorability to give some of the more Rice-oriented players some extra maps of leverage to work with, especially with Adri finding the first couple of misses through this introduction, dropping about a full 1.5% behind Dectopia as they try to make the recovery run here. Dectopia is still on that FC run. Here comes the first real major burst of the chart. Adri missing on the first couple. Dectopia keeping it clean.
Yeah, already halfway through. This is a very short chart, only 2 minutes in length, and that score difference is already 70k. And Adri is really struggling to build up that combo. Dectopia, on the other hand, hitting every single burst expertly.
Yeah, and the thing to really look at as Dectopia does finally find a slip up on one of the bursts is just how cleanly they can transition out of those 1/8 back into the 1/4. That is the real mark of somebody who has a real level of comfort on those patterns, because like I mentioned before on the speed pick, it's really easy to just kind of mash your way through it at the expense of some of your accuracy, but Dectopia taking very little damage outside of that one miss that they found, and it's enough to propel them to this 150,000 point lead. Pretty convincing and a very strong answer, opening up some more avenues of approach for them moving on further into this match as they make it 1-2 now.
Yeah, things are looking a wee bit scary, honestly, for Adri. Dectopia's won both of their first 2 picks very, very convincingly, over 100,000 score lead. Adri, on the other hand, only winning their first pick by, what, like 12k? It's a bit too close for comfort compared to how much Dectopia's winning their picks by. But at the same time, who kind of really cares like how much of a score difference it is? If Adri's winning the points, that's what matters at the end.
Exactly. It's not the margin of victory, it's just getting that W at the end of the day. And Adri gonna stick to their guns here, gonna go for LN1 here, sensing that they had a bit of an advantage on LN2, at least in terms of consistency, and looking to try and double up, maintain that parity between the two players on the last remaining LN pick in this pool.
Yeah, this one generally does feel a wee bit easier compared to LN2. I'm honestly not sure what way this map will go.
I think it's going to come down to, there's one particular transition in the middle of this chart that is a borderline nightmare to play through. It is a very fast 5-note 1/8 roll going into some disjointed 1/8s right after. It's very hard to time and keep consistent, so keep an eye out on that. Everything else is pretty much straightforward 1/4, a couple of varying hand patterns throughout, but overall the release difficulty on this isn't as hard as something like Hot Chocolate was, so this is definitely Dectopia's best opportunity to try and snatch a breakpoint away from Adri to open this match up.
Already seen a couple of 200s come out from both players, but Adri being the one to pick up a few more. Dectopia pretty much matching that though. Score lead of less than 1,000 numbers. I hate numbers.
Numbers are hard. The good thing is that now we have the delta showing us how the score difference between the players. Don't have to do the math in the head, and both players actually finding slip-ups on that nasty transition I was talking about to start this map off. It looks like Dectopia might have fared that tiny bit better overall as they trade misses once again. And Adri slipping up in terms of accuracy, not able to recover as cleanly out of that section compared to Dectopia as we get into the last major 1/4. There are some sneaky 3-note burst in between, and it catches Adri out down into the 97% range. Dectopia climbing back up into the 98s and building a 40,000 point advantage just off that alone.
Yeah, pretty major drops from both players, but clearly Dectopia has been able to recover from that well over 400 combo now. And with the last notes coming in, Dectopia is going to be taking the first breakpoint with a 70,000 point score lead on LN1.
Yeah, very well played from them, winning in the ratio battle and the miscount as well. Definitely just a tiny bit more comfortable on that pick. And it really did come down to that middle section. It was the breaking point where we saw that divergence between the two players. And now Dectopia in a prime position now, getting that first break point, and no more LNs left for Adri to go into. Kind of puts him in a bit of a rough spot. Not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. We have seen comebacks already this round, so it's not over till you claim that last point. And it looks like we're gonna go into hybrid 3 now.
Okay, yeah, hybrid 3, very long map. So if players do find misses in that, it is definitely possible to recover from it. Pretty sure this map has some like burst kind of stuff going on as well. So I guess Dectopia is looking to kind of take advantage of that, just as they did with hybrid 1.
Yeah, I think that is the main strategy for Dectopia here. Just hang on as best as they can through some of the harder LN sections and really capitalize on what I believe they might have found to be a pretty sizable weak point on the side of Adri in those speedy transitions. Like you mentioned, some pretty elongated 1/8 runs littered throughout this chart. So we're going to see if they can capitalize on this breakpoint to make it a match point situation now.
Alright, we have Dectopia with the mirror mod, which flips the game on the y-axis.
Yeah, in this case, doesn't really do much. All it really does is flip the seals. They do battle against each other as they have been throughout this match so far. As we get into that first 1/8 run, Adri finding the first drop between the two players, going to give Dectopia about an 8,000 point cushion to work with through this introduction.
Yeah, it looks like just from the very first instance of these bursts, looks like Dectopia's reasoning for picking this one is absolutely correct. Being able to hit those bursts just much more confidently than Adri. Score difference of around 20k. Early days in the map though.
Yeah, it looks like players are settling in now, getting a little bit comfortable with the chart overall. And as I say that, Adri finds another drop, and there are a couple as we make our way into the second quarter of the chart. The accuracy discrepancy between the two players about 3%. As we continue on here, Dectopia is still hovering in that 99% mark, and it feels like with each extended run that we see, that score lead just trickles further and further towards their side.
Yeah, I believe the worst hit timing I've seen coming from Dectopia is a 100 around a burst, but still holding on to that combo, that's the main thing. The accuracy is so high, 99.45. Score difference now around 60k halfway through the map. And with Adri resetting that combo once again, getting caught out by these doublets and quads, just the even note patterning. If you're not like a complete full-all player, that can pretty easily kind of mess up what hand you're kind of starting things on, and yeah, definitely easy to trip up. Yeah,
and because of the fact that you're getting primed with all these 3-note 1/4 gallops throughout this chart, that when you do get into one of those more freeform sections, it can really mess with your internal timing. And now that we're back into it, those 1/8 bursts that precede some of those 1/4 transitions, we've seen Dectopia being able to transition in and out of those very cleanly. I think they're still hanging on to this FC going into the last quarter. Adri putting up a bit of a valiant effort, but pretty much all for naught at the moment as we see another 6-digit lead begin to develop for Dectopia here going into the outro.
Yeah, once again, just Dectopia really showcasing just how strong they are on like their own picks. But yeah, Adri just kind of struggling with these bursts, and now that the pool difficulty, we're up to quarterfinals now. That's just density is just one of the main ways that you increase difficulty in one key, and Adri's just unfortunately not quite able to keep up as well as Dectopia is.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to Dectopia identifying their strong point in this map pool and really just hyper focusing on finding those picks to really capitalize on their capabilities. And that is, I believe, the first FC we've seen on this chart this weekend. This is one of the harder picks in this pool, tiebreaker notwithstanding, and would not be surprised if that is the score of the round on this map.
Yeah, an incredibly strong 983k. Really impressive.
And with that being said, it is now a match point situation for Dectopia. It is now 1-4 in their favor. Match point situation. The good thing is for Adri is that this is a winner's bracket match, so not eliminated from the tournament if they were to fall here. Just going to be diving on down into that lower bracket.
Yeah, pretty scary place to be. And Adri's gonna go for Rice 1, just keeping it simple. Trying to just go for the full combo, get a good ratio, and just see what happens. We see like another instance of Ghost isn't being interacted with at all. It's normally they're banned, or players just kind of avoiding it. I really want to see it like in a match.
It has been played before. In match to some interesting results. I feel like what really doesn't help a map like Ghost is the length of it. The fact that it only clocks in at about 1:40 with how technically demanding it is, how freeform some of the snaps can get. It is such a toss-up. You can instantly throw a run into the bin if you're not too careful with how you start some of those runs. So understandably, being avoided, maybe just respected by the players as a very dangerous pick with the relative skill level of everybody remaining in the bracket.
Yeah, for sure. Very much acts as a window towards what kind of like free-form, like snapping style maps we'll be seeing in the semi-finals, finals, and probably not quite grand finals yet. Still a bit too easy for that.
Yeah. We get into what our hosts consider as tech, because that is a very technically demanding pick, but that is a story for another time. We are now officially underway with Rice 1, the most, I would say, standard pick in the Rice pool remaining. These LNs, not the most intrusive, but can definitely be a bit of a concentration check, a bit of a overstream check as well.
Yeah, the map just basically following the drums of the song as they kind of increase in intensity over the course of the song. But there is this kind of a break section. See Dectopia out in the lead just purely from the accuracy alone. Score difference of just shy of 2,000. Here's where everything really picks up. Both players hit the very strange transition.
And things starting to even up once again between the two players. Adri picks up a 200 on one of those releases, but able to stay within 0.1% of Dectopia for the moment. Neither player really giving much of an inch, but it looks like Adri's taking a little bit more damage on some of these runs. There's a 200 from Dectopia traded back here as the build continues to occur from Adri here going into the last third.
Oh, the score difference is still so close. Just a couple of 200s, even a miss from Dectopia can give Adri the lead that they need to be able to stay within this match.
Yeah, Adri playing for their winner's bracket life at the moment.
Oh, and there it
huge
is.
rush of 200s from both players, but Adri managing to weather the storm that little bit better, and now they take over the lead. Both FCs still left on the board here with an eighth of the chart left to go. It is 7,000 points in favor of Adri at the moment as we get into the last couple of runs here. Can they maintain the pace? They gotta keep focused through some of these disjointed runs, but Adri finds the slip up.
Hold on.
Is there enough time? Dectopia takes over the lead. It is 2,700 points. It is climbing in their direction. They do not have the accuracy in their favor, but as the last couple of notes rain down, it is going to be Dectopia taking it at the 11th hour, avoiding giving over that point and taking the match point to clinch the match by a score 5-1.
Yeah, I thought coming up towards the end there, Adri had that one would be 4-2 and going on to the next map. Just really unfortunate miss there. But Dectopia mostly just finding all of their greats, goods, and bads on that one LN stream. Very interesting idea for a race map, but
yeah,
you know,
I mean,
they basically play like race anyway. So
exactly, it's meant to just keep you on your toes a little bit, maybe a little bit debatable in terms of the styling. Yeah, it's a spicy rice pick. But with that being said, that will do it for this match. Congratulations to Dectopia. Once again, Adri not eliminated from the tournament just yet. Just going to be going up against XK in the losers semifinals. XK successfully making it through the first conditional gauntlet in the quarterfinals to see themselves make it that far. And we still have a couple more matches left to decide here. There are 4 more before the weekend is done. Right now we do have at the 17 o'clock or 17 UTC hour, it is going to be Punish taking on Mini Egg 23 to see who makes it through to the semifinals, and then take a bit of a break and then we'll return with the last slate of matches. So, Teezel, you got anything else left to add?
No, I think that's it. You know, once again, just keep a lookout in the Discord for the stream pings, because I never know if things are actually getting streamed until I get pinged. Like, oh, come cast it. So, you know, just keep an eye out there. Every match that does get streamed does get pinged. So, yeah, if you want to keep watching, look out for that. And I have no idea when the map pool showcase will be, whether we'll be having it this evening or tomorrow sort of morning UTC time, but you know, should be pretty soon overall, so that's another thing to keep an eye out for as well. But yeah, just until then, see you next time.
See y'all.